But even though it was kindly received in some quarters, I swore I'd never write a sequel. I don't like sequels, by and large, although sometimes they are welcome. The most important reason to forego a follow-up was that I'd already sent strangers uninvited into the town and the lives of people I love and respect, and I could not imagine doing so again. A strange thing happened, though, on the many book tours that supported the publication of Zippy and of my 2 novels. In every city, I was asked what became of the people I'd drawn, according to my own lights and in keeping with my memory of them, where they were now, and if they were happy. That was to be expected. But I was also always asked this: "What about your mom? Did she ever get up off the couch?" The first time I heard the question, a little bell rang on a faraway hill, and I knew if I ever did, and I wouldn't, write a follow-up, which I absolutely would not do, that would be the subject, and that would be the title. Of course, I gave in to the 6 or 7 people clamoring for a sequel. In the beginning, I didn't intend to write anything but a continuing portrait of my family, in particular of my mother. Toward the end of Zippy, my father and I watched Mom pedal away on my new bicycle, riding toward points unknown. We knew something was afoot, but we didn't know what. She Got Up Off the Couch begins at that point. It seemed an appropriate jumping-off place for a book about an individual woman in a very particular place. But when Rose read the final draft, she pointed out that Mother's evolution, personal as it was, is also the story of a generation of women who stood up and rocked the foundations of life in America. They didn't know they were doing so. They were trying to save their own lives, I think, but in the process, they took it on the chin for everyone who followed. I know my own mother did. I will never do anything half so grand or important. I couldn't tell this story any way except through my own eyes, but that doesn't make me the star of the show. As Zippy was a bow to Moorland, Indiana, this is a love letter, humbly conceived and even more modestly written, to my father, my brother, the sister who is my very breath of life, and most of all to the woman who stood up, brushed away the pork rind crumbs, and escaped by the skin of her teeth. It is a letter to all such women, wherever they may be. Mr. Antrobus. Well, how's the whole crooked family? Thornton Wilder, The Skin of Our Teeth, Act 1. The Test. The couch in the den was the color the crayon people called flesh, even though it resembled no human or animal flesh on planet Earth, and the couch fabric was nubbled in a pattern of diamonds. It was best to prevent the nubbles from coming into direct contact with one's real flesh, so there was usually a blanket or a towel or clothing spread out as a buffer. Also, no one wanted to pick up the blanket, the towel, and the clothing and fold them, or even pick them up, so it was a fine arrangement. She had a lamp, a small end table so covered with things, layer upon layer, that the stuff at the bottom was from a different decade than the stuff in the middle. She had a cardboard box in which she kept books from the bookmobile, her favorite Afghan for emergency napping, a notebook, and pen. There had been years with no telephone, but mostly the telephone worked and was often near Mother's head, often enough, in fact, that Dad referred to it as her Siamese twin. The television was only a few feet away, and there were always animals for company. 5 steps in one direction was the kitchen, 4 steps in the other was the bathroom. In winter, the den was the only room in the house with heat, so we all lived there. In summer, it was so hot I feared spontaneous combustion, which Dr. Demento reported was happening to Canadian priests with regularity. I popped in and out of the den. I was a very busy person, and my responsibilities were numerous, which Mother understood. Dad came and went. He also had engagements far and wide, and we had long since ceased asking what they were. A man had to protect his mysteries. It was one of the primary liberties of manhood in our home. There were many others. My older brother Dan was gone to his grown-up life. My sister Melinda was on her way at 17. All my life there had been certain constants, facts so steady I assumed they were like trees or mountains, things you could trust to stay where you left them because they were mountains. And yes, the Bible says faith can move one, but the Bible also says a whole lot of stuff that if you tried to make it true, you'd end up in the epileptic village. My constants were the same as everyone else's. A house with quite a few rooms and utilities.